But there are other dissociative elements in different illnesses. In the dissociative disease category, there's something called unspecified dissociative disorder, and there's something that he testified to, and this dissociative disorder not otherwise specified. And that, I suggest to you, is far more applicable to him, because it talks about much briefer intervals of memory loss, usually tied around very stressful events. So you might remember going to Tahiti's, but you're not going to remember other stuff. And there's also the gap-filling issue. The gap-filling issue where you heard that over his lifetime, this isn't the first time he just kind of disappeared, or had some memory loss of where he'd been and whatever. And I respectfully suggest to you, as Dr. Abloh did, that he doesn't really want people to think he's sick. He doesn't want people to think he can't remember stuff. That's very important. That's very humiliating. Just like he didn't want people to think he was sexually molested. He doesn't want that. That he has bad enough esteem already, not being able to do anything in the world, and he doesn't want to add to it with that. So he makes stuff up sometimes. Yeah, I can really play the system, and yeah, I remember where I was. I was with, but the thing to remember here is Dr. Abloh feels quite certain there's a dissociative quality to this, that he does not have selective memory as Dr. Kelly would, or the prosecution would have you believe, but he really cannot remember when the illness is psychotically flourishing. And I suggest to you respectfully, there is no other explanation that makes rational sense. Every story has to make sense. That for this 18-hour period, he just wasn't absolutely, literally, figuratively, and legally out of his mind. I mean, he tried to kill 3 people in an 18-hour period. And the way he did it, and the other stuff that we discussed about how he went about it, and the after effects of it, and so forth, don't only speak to somebody with serious mental illness, but kind of shout it out respectfully. Dr. Abloh also told you that he had a major depression that's reflected in diagnoses since he was 15 or 16 or whenever they started, and that he has a severe personality disorder. And Dr. Abloh read some of the personality disorder criteria. And the last one for severe personality disorder is that you in fact have dissociative moments. And respectfully, what happened to him in this time period, and others in his life, certainly from wherever it came from, is a dissociative moment. And that's only magnified by the notion that, particularly when you start as an adolescent, even pre-adolescent, long-term alcohol abuse absolutely destroys the higher cortical function of the brain. It affects the hippocampus, where the higher cortical capacities exist: memory, empathy, impulse control. So when you take a look at the whole mosaic here, the whole picture here, of the actual mental illnesses he has, and the polymorphous substance abuse disorder he has, mostly alcohol, though he's tried other drugs to kind of find relief. You know, it paints a picture of somebody who, in a very sick human being, only getting sicker as time went on. And when you take a look at the aftermath of any of these attacks, I mean, what happens after he leaves Kelly Ballantyne? What does he do? What does he do? I would suggest to you a reasonable person, particularly given the day he's had, who was able to have insight and reflect, probably the last thing in the world they would do is go to a hospital. Because they would figure, whoa, you know, there's a blood trail I've left from there, and this woman is not dead. They're calling the police. They're calling the ambulances. They're going to be all over here. I better get away from here. And how did he leave there, by the way? Did he run away in this incredibly fearful thing when one of the witnesses yelled, "Hey, asshole, I've called 911. The cops are on the way"? Did he run away? No. He didn't run away. Dr. Kelly thought he'd run away, but then respectfully said that it really wasn't important. But I suggest it is important, and I leave it to you to decide whether it's important enough. He doesn't run away. He doesn't run away. He looks up at the person who's yelling at him, according to that person, and then slowly, deliberately saunters away, walks away. And what does he do? Does he go into hiding? I mean, is this third person in the same day in the same neighborhood he's trying to kill? Does he go into hiding? No. He grabs a cab, and he goes to the nearest hospital, Tufts Medical Center. What does he do when he gets there? Well, if you quietly go somewhere and try to kind of get stitched up without anyone realizing he's there, because it's a bad idea to go to any hospital, bad idea really to go to that hospital. It certainly shows an incredible inability to bring rational thought to bear. What does he do? Well, you heard that from one of the witnesses. You heard that from, I guess it was Miss Ryan, who was, I guess, a roommate of Miss Ballantyne's, and who went there in a different ambulance that she went there in. And she says, you know, I looked up at this guy, and he had a bleeding hand. He was holding it up in the air, wrapped in something, and he was screaming, "What a fucking hospital, I'm bleeding out!" And then later on, something to the effect, screaming again at the top of his lungs, "I can't get any effing water here." Now, if you think that is the product of a rational mind, of somebody who is not in the throes of major mental illness, who has any ability to bring any insight or control to what he's doing, then that's how you'll feel. I respectfully suggest to you it shows quite the opposite. And of course, at some point security comes over and they begin to put pieces together and he gets arrested. You had the opportunity to see his post-arrest statement. You had the opportunity to view him. You had the opportunity to look at him close to the time that all of this stuff happened. You had a chance to look at how he was acting, at his face, and who this person was. I have no comment on that. I leave that to you to make a determination of what he looked like to you that night. Did he look like an antisocial personality, or did he look like somebody who was in desperate trouble, not just criminal trouble? You know he dropped out of school in 9th grade. You know he got a generous GED when he was in prison, in the prison program. You know about all the things he can't do, and you know about the very few things he can do. I think it's about time I look at my notes for 1 minute, don't you? I would respectfully suggest to you that on July 23rd and 24th, Edwin Alemany was a profoundly sick individual. That he was insane, as that term is understood in the law. He did not bear criminal responsibility for what he did. That this was an illness that is reflected in it is not simply an antisocial personality. It is a deep psychotic illness that has persisted for a lifetime. It is an illness that has stripped him of the ability to be criminally responsible, to the capacity certainly to conform his behavior to the requirements of the law, and as I understand wrongfulness, not to be able to appreciate the wrongfulness of his actions as well. I would suggest to you that when you take a look at some of the materials you can have, that you will see that Dr. Abloh is a person who had deep worries about him and has diagnosed him with very, very serious mental illnesses, psychotic illnesses. What Dr. Abloh varies is, and perhaps this is just something that developed even more later, when he was no longer getting medicated and in treatment, what Dr. Abloh suggested is there's a very strong dissociative element to it. They missed that in a lot of the hospitals he was in, but that they fact, they call it the intensity of his illness. They call it the depth of his depravity. They just treated it and didn't know what to do about it, and they kept trying and trying. One hospital after another they would send him to, because the doctors there knew that there were serious, serious problems, and they had to be addressed. But then he turned 18, he aged out, and those resources and those services disappeared. I said to you earlier today that if you can simply keep your word to me, take a look at this case dispassionately. Take a look at this case as American citizens who are judging another American citizen in a country of laws, not because he can't be penalized because he's unpopular. He can't be penalized because of the horrific nature of these crimes. If you believe after careful consideration of everybody's arguments, all the evidence you have in this case, if you believe that at the time of the offense of these crimes that he absolutely did not possess the requisite criminal responsibility to be found guilty, I ask you to find him not guilty by reason of insanity, and I ask you to let the court system take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it possible we could take a bathroom break?
We should take that. We'll take a 5-minute break.
All right. First, don't have my chin, step down.